Hello, Nano Burger here once again, and it's time to complete our video here to reload 110 film. I realized that in the last video I didn't really show you what the film looked like since I wanted to develop it. Well, I developed it, and as luck would have it, it was totally blank. It was probably stored pretty improperly. But I saved it so we can actually see what the film looks like. This is the very beginning of the film. As you can see, it has an inch or two, this round perforation, and then we go into a series of perforations that actually delineate between each of the exposures. And if you count them up, there'll be 24 of those exposures. And as you come to the very end of the roll, we've got another round perforation and this odd oval perforation that we saw when we were trying to unload the cartridge. So that's what 110 film actually looks like. So by this time you will have taken apart your cartridges. And in this case I wanted to show you just a little difference between the cartridges here. They're all morphologically the same, however some are easier to take apart than others. This old Kodak Kodacolor gold film here, it's a pretty old cartridge and came apart just fine. Basically you took a razor blade or a razor knife and cut through the seams here and along the seams on the side, and then you just kind of cracked it and it came apart very easily. This is the kind you want to look for an older version of the cartridge. This Solaris cartridge here came apart very easily as well. Simply did the same thing and it kind of fell apart. However, this Fuji Color cartridge really was tough to get apart. We did the cuts here and along the sides. However, the seam on the bottom here really was glued on there, and if you take a good look at it, you can see where the glue, it was either glued or electrolytically sealed with electricity and heat, but being sealed almost along the entire thing here really made it a challenge to open. So if you are a beginner at this sort of thing, I'd suggest you start with an old Kodak cartridge, and there are enough of them around there, believe me, and save the Fuji Color when you've gotten enough confidence in taking these things apart. Okay, well, it's really time to start talking about cameras, because the camera that you have will determine what type of film you want to reload your cartridge with. There are two big divisions in the 110 world. 110 cameras that work without the perforation, and 110 cameras that will work with the perforation. The perforation I'm talking about, as you can see here, is this one perforation per frame. There is a small feeler bar inside the camera that feels for this perforation, and once it kind of goes through this perforation, it can reload the shutter and make sure that the camera can operate correctly. A lot of the older, really crappier 110 cameras will use this system exclusively. However, luckily, most of the higher end 110 cameras do not really need this perforation to operate. A simple test for this, we'll do it right here with our Pentex Auto 110. This is a higher end 110 camera. I already know it will take film without perforations, but the test is you'll simply open up the rear of the camera, no film in there whatsoever. you advance the shutter, and this shutter will advance all day because, again, it's not feeling the perforation in the film. And if you look very closely, you can see that right there is the feeler bar. It feels the perforation, and right now it's feeling absolutely nothing because there's no film in there. So you want to make sure it's cocked and press the shutter release and see if it actually functions. Well, it did actually function, so that means it can take film without a perforation. If it did not function, you'd have to use perforated film, which is a little bit more difficult to work with. Okay, now that you know what your camera needs, and in this case it's unperforated film, what kind of film choices do you have? Well, you can do all sorts of film choices, because any film, 35mm film or 120 film, can be slit down to 16mm size. That's the size that fits into this cartridge here. Well, there's actually an easier solution than actually either building or buying a film slitter. That is actually using 16mm film. 16mm film is still a going concern. It used to be a very common film stock. A little less common now, but still there are a lot of folks in the world that are using it, perhaps especially North Korea. And it is, of course, 16mm wide. This particular one here I have is a cin film, which is, it stands for cinema, which just means it goes into a movie camera. This particular one it's called double perf. It has perforations on both sides of the film, and that help it go through the camera. These perforations are actually a problem when you want to load it into a 110 camera, because if you take this perforated cin film and compare it to the actual 110 film, you'll see that the perforations do not line up very well. In fact, to this perforation here to this perforation here in the 110 film, you have 4 perforations on the double perf film. So theoretically, if you use this in a camera, it would catch on every one of those perforations and overlap your exposures. It's not the end of the world if you want to use this stuff, because you can take a couple of dummy photographs in between with your hand over the lens so no light strikes it, and actually get exposures that do not overlap. There is another type of cin film called single perf. I don't have any here, but you can imagine it, just that the perforations are only on one side. And the way you want to use this film is with the non-perforated side in the cartridge in such a way that the feeler bar does not catch on these perforations. Anywho, what kind of film I like to use is not this perforated cin film, but this. This right here is 16mm film. It is microfilm stock. One of the standard types of microfilm is 16mm, which fits very well inside of our 16mm 110 cartridges. This has the added benefit of being extremely sharp. It is one of the sharpest films you can buy in the world. It's used for microfilm, so obviously it has to be very, very sharp. There are a lot of downsides in using this, especially it's a very slow film. It goes at about 25 ISO, or 25 ASA if you still use ASA. And when you develop it as black and white film, it is very contrasty. But there are ways around that. You can develop it with very dilute developers or compensating developers or two-part developers. There are ways to manage that kind of contrast. But I like it because it is not perforated, and you don't have the problems with the perforation that you have with the thin film with the perforations. Okay, so now that we have our film, one of the things we have to do is cut it down to the length of the 110 film. And I took my 110 film here and measured it against a meter stick or yardstick, and came out with 29 7/8 inches, or that's 75.9 centimeters. Well, you know, there are variations in the film length just like anything else, so I think it's safe to go with 30 inches or 76 millimeters when you're cutting it. Since you are trying to have the film not struck by light, you have to do this inside a changing bag or a dark room with absolutely no light, unless you have a certain orthochromatic film, which is not very likely. So what you want to do is either get a dummy piece of film like I have here, or a piece of paper or a piece of string or something that's cut down to 30 inches or 76 centimeters, and measure that along the film length inside the changing bag. That way you can do it all in the dark and shouldn't have a problem. Okay, one of the problems that you might have, especially if you're cutting this in a changing bag, is discerning which side is the emulsion side and which side is not the emulsion side. Easy way to do this, and I'll demonstrate this with a little chunk of microfilm here, is to either unspool it off the reel a little bit and take a little snip, and carefully maintaining the orientation, take it out of the your bag or your dark room and look at it. Generally, you'll be able to tell the emulsion side from the non-emulsion side. The non-emulsion side is very shiny, and the other side's a little bit duller. But an easier way, especially if your hands are inside of a dark bag or changing bag, is to take your fingers and get some spit on them, or water, or whatever. Okay, a little spit from my tongue there. And take the film and press it between your two fingers and let go. The side that lets go easily is the non-emulsion side, and the side that does not let go is the emulsion side. And if you take it off, you can probably see it changes color a little bit too. If you want to take it out of the film bag, you can tell which side is the emulsion side and which side is not. Okay, once you've got that done, you can take your film cartridge, which you have right here, take it apart. Okay, remember we have just a few pieces. You have the bottom, the top that kind of forms a cover over it, and you have the reel, and here you have the backing paper. As you can see, this backing paper is kind of already used since it's starting out with 24. What you want to do is you want to start it at the beginning. And as you can see, since we ripped the backing paper out with the film, it's no longer attached. Okay, the first step we have here that we'd like to accomplish is to attach the backing paper to the take-up spindle. Originally this was kind of glued on here or melted on here or something along those lines. But remember, when we took the backing paper out, we yanked it off, so it's no longer attached. What we want to do is reattach it. So this is how the spindle fits in here. and you just have to make sure that you orient the backing paper so all the stuff that's written on back is on the outside, so it'll kind of curl this way. So once you have that orientation correct, time to attach it. And you can attach it with a very small piece of tape and tape it to there. But what I like to do is to ensure that bond is pretty strong, I like to go all the way around the spindle and use the tape to do both sides of the backing paper. It's kind of a little thing that I picked up, bulk loading film, just to give that a little bit extra security. So what we've done here is cut an extra long piece of electrical tape, a couple inches, and you can use any tape really. I just like to use electrical tape. It's pretty cheap and available. And what we'll do here is to put it in this little well that is built onto the spindle. Kind of move it around till we got two pieces of the sticky side facing each other. That's actually a little bit too long, so I'll just kind of, yikes. I will cut that off there. Okay, pull it apart. Okay. And as you can see, the two tapes are there, and we will take our backing paper and attach it in such a way that both sides are actually touching it. And as you can see here, on one side the tape is on there, on the other side it gives it a very strong bond and will roll up very nicely. Okay, now that you've got it attached to the spindle, what we would like to do is to just wind the whole thing on there. 324. Okay. And on a lot of the backing papers, you will see the X's here, and has this notch cut out. This notch is actually where the film begins. So this white part here, and where the X's begin, you can start your film there. And you actually have an inch or so of more film. I've experimented at times putting a couple of extra exposures on there, but it's really not worth the problems trying to figure the whole thing out. Just stick with 24, you'll be good. Okay, so take my film. Again, this is 30 inches of film, or 76 centimeters. And you want to make sure that you know which side is the emulsion side and which side is not the emulsion side. Do that with our little finger trick. Okay, that's the emulsion side, that's the non-emulsion side. Okay, so we want the emulsion side sticking towards the camera. The writing on this should be on the outside, so we'll start right here. Okay, so it starts right here. As you can see, underneath is the notch. And what we want to do is to start rolling this from this side, making sure to include the film with the backing paper. Okay, once you get it started, it's a little difficult to get started, but not impossible. You just start rolling the whole thing up. This will make the sandwich of the backing paper and the film. Okay, so you want to do this. Again, this is all in the dark, so probably a little bit more difficult than it looks here. Okay. As we near the end, you can see there's exposure number 1. However, again, we have a couple of inches of microfilm before that. So just keep on rolling it up. You want to get to a point where you actually see the microfilm, maybe an inch or so. And now it's time to start building the cassette. You want the bottom here with the 2 big chambers, and the idea is to get this film bundle into the small chamber and have the film across here, and then simply putting the spindle on the center of the film take-up chamber. Okay, so we're gonna scrunch this up a little bit. Let's make sure it's a nice small package and is able to fit inside there. Okay, since you've kind of wound it, it kind of telescopes out a little bit and fills the chamber. Not a problem. Okay, so you want to make sure that you have film and that you can see film. Again, this is all by feel, and you want to start rolling up the other side. And the critical point right here is to make sure that the film gets rolled up along with the backing paper on the spindle. As you can see, film and the backing paper are on the spindle. And once you get it to a point that you're comfortable with, put the spindle in there, in the take-up chamber. So, just to recap here, we've got the film and the backing paper here. Backing paper is going across the back of the film. On the inside, the exposure, the emulsion side is facing this way towards the camera. And on here, the spindle, take-up spindle is on here, and you can kind of move it forward a little bit just to make sure that the film is there. Okay, that's the hard part, and it may sound complicated, but it's really very simple, and once you do a few of these, it's almost impossible to make a mistake. Okay, final thing you have to do, again, this is all in the dark, is to put the top on. Easy enough, just kind of fits together, and you'll see the backing paper through the window. On the other side, you'll see, in this case, our bright blue, or actually purple microfilm. And one thing that people like to do is to put a strip of tape on both the take-up and the supply side of the film, and that'll just keep it from unraveling when you don't want it to. So here I'll just take 2 small snippets of tape, put them on the supply side chamber and put it on the take-up chamber. Make sure that you don't have any tape messing with the take-up spindle and reel in there. Okay, well there you got it. Here is your reloaded cassette. A few things you have to keep in mind are that, of course, this is lower speed film. Microfilm usually runs around 25 ASA, and this is geared towards 200. Even though, as we discussed before, the long bar here is the low speed sensor. However, it doesn't go that low, so you'll probably have to trick your camera and take longer exposures. We can cover that later, but let's see how she works in our Pentax Auto 110. Okay, just as Dick Van Dyke said, it's easy enough to load. Just put it in there. one thing you want to do is to watch the back, because this thing will wind endlessly and you'll go through all 24 exposures of your film before taking pictures. So you want to look back, look at the back, and you'll see, okay, there's always 3 numbers, so I always choose the middle. And okay, we'll wind it. Make sure we have enough light. We'll point it into the light bulb here and take your exposure. Okay, move it forward until you see the correct number in the back of the camera here, and take your next exposure. Okay, and do that all the way through the roll, using the back number here as a guide on where to advance to, and you'll run through your entire roll. And then when you're done, of course, you take it out and disassemble it, take out the film and put it onto a reel and develop it yourself.